Well, welcome to our class in Biblical Hebrew. We're now on chapter 13, where we've going to go into more in depth into the cow perfect stem or cow stem perfect conjugation strong verbs. Our last lesson on chapter 12, we just did a general overview of the verbs and the different stems, their conjugations. And so, we got 7 stems and 8 conjugations um, that we went into. And today we're going to go ahead and go into the cow perfect here. Now, we always have 72,000 verbs in the Hebrew Bible, and over two-thirds of them, 50,699, occur in the cow stem. And for this reason, we're going to put a lot of attention and given to the various forms of the cow stem because for, like I said, two-thirds of the chance, over 66% are the odds that you're going to come across a cow stem verb versus a dry stem verb in the scriptures. So now what we're going to do is we're going to learn to master the cow stem, um, and then we'll go into the dry stems later on. Now, in this grammar, memorization of the paradigms will be kept to a minimum, and we only need to study the cow stem because once we have the endings, the suffixes or the sufformative endings on this cow stem perfect, then that is pretty much applicable to all the other stems, also in the perfect tense. So what we're going to look for is we're going to look to learn for a system of diagnostic indicators whereby we can identify the derived stems and their conjugations. Later on, we'll get into derived stems. So let's go ahead and go further into the cow stem. Again, as we said, mentioned last chapter, last lesson, that the cow stem is a simple or basic verbal stem. And cow verbs are active in voice, though there are a few passive forms do exist. The cow stem also exhibits a simple type of action, an action of a verb in the cow stem like katal. We have here katal, meaning he killed. The simple action of the cow stem is further divided into transitive, intransitive, and stative. These three types. Okay, now the transitive type of verb that we have may take a direct object. An example, the prophet wrote the book. The word book is the direct object of the word verb wrote because it receives the verbal action. And so that's what we call a transitive verb. It requires a direct object. Now, in the intransitive type of verb, intransitive verbs cannot take a direct object. The English verb, for example, perish, doesn't require a direct object. For the king perished in the battle, and it can't take a direct object here. All you have is a prepositional phrase there. And other examples of the intransitive verb include to live or to die or to fast, etc. And so those are called intransitive verbs. They cannot take a direct object. Now, the third group we have is what we call the stative verbs, and we've gone to stative nouns before. They are actually a noun is a state of being. And so, an example, the priest is old. The verbal construction is old describes the state or condition of the subject. So, in English, a stative or a state of being idea is expressed with a form of the verb to be and an adjective old. So in Hebrew, a stative idea may be expressed through various verbs themselves. For example, such as kaved. Kaved means to be heavy, or chaton, to be small. Most stative verbs are considered to be intransitive because they cannot take a direct object here. So that's what a stative. Statives are considered to basically be intransitive. It tells us the condition about the subject. Now let's go ahead and get into the perfect conjugation here. The perfect conjugation, remember we have 8 conjugations, as of perfect is one of the 8 conjugations. The perfect conjugation is used to express a completed action or a state of being. Now when we use it to describe a completed action, the Hebrew perfect may be translated by the English past tense for example, he studied, or the present perfect, he has studied, or the past perfect, or what we call the pluperfect, he had studied, or the future perfect, he will have studied. So when we use it to describe a state of being, it will be translated with the English present tense, he is wise, or the past tense, he was wise. The Hebrew perfect may also be translated by the English present tense with verbs of perception or attitude, like he knows or he loves. It must be emphasized that the Hebrew perfect does not have tense, which is time of action, apart from context or issues of syntax. Basically what it's saying is that the context and the syntax of that sentence will determine the tense of that verb. Rather, it primarily signifies aspect, the type of action, whether it's completed action or incompleted action. And the perfect aspect designates a verbal action with its conclusion envisioned in the mind of the speaker or the writer. So basically, the perfect aspect denotes completed action, whether in the past, present, or future, whether it actually has happened or it's in the mind of the writer right there. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the introduction to cow perfect strong verbs. The perfect conjugation is sometimes called the suffix conjugation because it's been called the suffix conjugation because different inflectional endings of what we call suffixatives are added to the verbal root in order to indicate person, gender, number. Now, we need to go ahead and memorize the cow perfect paradigm with view to both writing and oral recitation. What we want to do is make sure we understand these endings, these suffixes, or the suffixatives on here. And so, in every perfect conjugation of the cow and derived stems, the suffixatives are the same, and so that's the reason why we want to memorize these endings. Once we get these endings down, then in the perfect conjugation, they are the same all across the boards, and that's really nice to know that you don't have to memorize anything else in here. And again, we're memorizing to recognize. That's the whole purpose of that. So what we're going to do is go ahead and look at this paradigm, the cow perfect paradigm, and you'll see that these letters, the vowels and the consonants that are highlighted are actually what we call the sufformative endings or the suffixes on this verb. We look at the root here, it's katal. Here, the root katal in the third masculine singular, it stays the same. This is the lexical form. This is the form that you will find in the lexicon when you're looking it up, is in the perfect, cow perfect, third masculine singular form. So if we want to say, and so this would be, katal would say he killed, katela would be she killed, and again we see the comments hey here as an indicator, as we have seen before in nouns and in adjectives, that basically that talks about the feminine and shows that it's feminine here. So this is the third feminine singular, she killed. Now we go down to the second person masculine singular. We have the tav and the comments. And of course, the accent is in the middle syllable and not on the end. Whenever you see this caret here, the accent in Hebrew normally is at the end, but when you see these carets here over the syllable, that's telling you that's the accented syllable. So katalta is how we would pronunciate that, and the tav with the geshelene in there, and the comments is the suffix or the sufformative ending. So we have katalta. Katalt is the second feminine singular. You killed. And so we actually have two consonants with two shavas, non-vocal shavas side by side here. And this is really the only time you see this here. So this is actually just two syllables, not three syllables. Katalt. And that would be you killed, feminine singular. Katalti, again, katalti here, the accent's over the second syllable. And we have the tav, hirik yod. is the sufformative ending telling us that this is first common singular. Remember, on the pronominal suffixes, it was the heric yod that told you that it was first common singular. Um, so that's a good little way to associate that right there, the first common singular here in the type 1 pronominal suffix, and the same thing, except the only difference is you have the tav heric yod in this here. Okay, let's go ahead and go to katelu. Katelu, here again, the shuric is telling you that that is a third common plural. Remember, we have in the first, we first person common singular, we have this is common. Here it doesn't make a distinction between masculine and feminine. Also, in the third common plural here, katelu, it doesn't make any distinction here in the perfect. Basically, it could be either masculine or feminine here. When we go to the second masculine plural, we have Tim in there. And so we basically have Tim in the second. Again, we have that mem. And we said earlier in the earlier lessons, the mem suffix is usually the indicator that it's masculine, and the noon is the indicator that it's feminine. And then the same thing here. We have ketaltim, for you all killed, masculine, and kataltin, for you all feminine killed. So this is telling us that these are the subjects would be feminine in here, and that the subjects in this one, kataltim, that they're masculine. All right, let's go ahead and go down to the first common plural here, katalnu. We have the noon and the shuric. It tells us that that is first common plural. And so that's how we know here. So basically what we want to learn is the sufformative endings, katal, katala, katalta, katalti, katalt, katalti, katelu, kataltim, kataltin, and katalnu. Here, it's in we killed here. So basically, that's what you want to look at. And remember, the only time you get, remember everything is here. You have the comments up under the kof and the patak over the tet here. And see, when you add another syllable on, that patak reduces to a shava, and your comments remains the same under your kof here. And so that's the only time you see it. The only time your kof comments on your kof reduces when you get down to the second masculine plural and the second feminine plural, because you've added on another. The accent actually is over here on the last syllable, so the vowel up under the kof is actually further away, and it reduces down to a shava, a vocal shava here. And you go back and remember your rules of vowel reduction in here. But that's the main thing we want you to learn right now is these endings, these formative endings here, highlighted in red. Now, that's basically about it. Besides your commons that you have a first common singular, a first common plural, and a third common plural in the perfect conjugation here, perfect tense here. And that will be, like I said, the same throughout all the perfects of every stem. So main thing you keep in mind your stems and then your conjugations, the perfect conjugation here. Let's see here. Basically, let's just went over that. So what we're going to do is, once you've mastered the spelling and pronunciation of the cow perfect paradigm list above, you're encouraged to practice perfect inflection with other strong verbs like yashav, shamar, katav, zakar, chavatz together in there, and they pretty much all act the same way. Notice that in the presence in katela, in the third feminine singular, you have the vertical member here called a metheg. And this little vertical member beside to the left of the comments is telling you that that is a long A and not a, that is a comments and not a comments satuf. That's a long A vowel and not a short O. Is what that's telling you. And you'll see that a lot of times just to indicate that for you. Well, you can go down here to 13.7 and look at the different paradigms of these other verbs. You have yashav, to dwell, yashav, yasheva, yashavta, yashavt, yashavti, yashevu, yashavtim, yashavtin, and yashavnu. Same thing. Everything happens the same way. Your final vowel reduction under your yod here of your comments, that's when you have your total vowel reductions in the second masculine plural and the second feminine plural. And you see it across the boards here, whether it's zakar, katav, shamar, kavatz. It's the same thing in here. So what you'll want to do is go through in your homework and be able to go over and write those things out. Just become familiar with those endings there. The frequency of occurrence and going over it and over it, it will come pretty regular to you. And we won't spend enough time on this so that we can get this down before we go into the imperfect tense or imperfect conjugation. Now, verbal roots ending in tav. When a verbal root ending in tav receives a sufformative beginning with a tav, the two identical consonants become one consonant with a doggish forte. In other words, the two tavs is written as one tav with a doggish forte in it. And we've seen that in pronominal suffixes also. Whenever we had a noun that had either a noon or a tav, and you had a performative ending for it, then you would just double it the same way. Now, as you observed from the above paradigm, 5 of the perfect subformatives begin with the tav. So, so there's going to be some doubling in there on that. So we're going to take an example of karat, to cut. We have karata, which is you cut, second masculine singular. You have the tav from the root karat, and then the tav and the chametz for the sufformative. So you have one tav with a dagesh forte, a doubling dagesh there. Same thing with karat. Here you have a tav with a shavab under it, and then you have the root of tav, and so you basically have two tavs there with one closing the first syllable and the other one opening the other one, or actually being there with those two right there. Also, you have karate or karate here. So you have basically the tav, the hurricane yod, which is sufformative, and the tav is part of the root here. And karatim and karatin. So those 5 are the ones that have the tav that begins with the tav for the sufformative ending here. As you can see, the two identical consonants have become one consonant. The final tav of the verbal root is assimilated into the tav of the perfect sufformative in there. So we also have the same thing when we have noons. Verbal root ending in noon is similar to the discussion that we just talked about with the tav. When a verbal root ending in noon receives a perfect sufformative beginning with the noon, the two identical consonants become one consonant with a doggish forte. The only sufformative that begins with a noon is the first common plural, nu. Observe, therefore, that the first common plural form of shakan, which is, this is the root, shin, kaf, nun, to dwell, is written as shekanu. You see that Dagesh forte in that noon right there. So basically, it's written as one with the Dagesh forte. Now, also this process of assimilation of noon into the first common plural is also observable in those perfect forms that have subformity endings with the tav. In other words, noon and tav can also become a tav with a dagesh forte. For example, the first common singular form of the verb natan, to give, when you add that in, you have a noon from natan, and you add the tav, the hirik yod, the noon that's part of the root assimilates into the tav, and it becomes a dagesh forte. And we've seen that before, what we call the noon of assimilation, and that's a common characteristic that happens with the noon. The root noon. So the final noon of the verbal root has assimilated into the tav of the subformative, and its presence is represented by the dagesh forte. So we've seen that before, like in the preposition men and other instances that we've gone into. We've seen basically it will tend to assimilate. And we'll see that as we get into some other verbal forms, that same process, that same principle going on. Now, when we have stated verbs, perfect, you've learned that the stated verb describes the state of being. And so the one way you can tell it's a stated verb is by their stem vowel. The stem vowel is a vowel that is associated with the second root consonant or the second letter. And so we'll get into here. And the vowel is a patak. It can be a patak, or like we have in this example here, gadal, to become great, or chacham, to be wise. We do have what they call patak statives, because the patak here is what tells you that that is a patak stative right here. The stative verb comes in a couple different stem vowels. You have the sere stative, which is kaved, to be heavy, or zakain, to be old. These letters, these vowels highlighted in red, are giving you the example what it, the different types. And then we have the holum stative, where you have a holum like katon, to be small, or yakol, to be able. Those are what they call holum stative verbs. So there's three different types of stative verbs. Each type is distinguished by its stem vowel. The patak stative is spelled just like the other strong verbs you have studied in the chapter, and so there's not going to be much difference here that you studied. The endings are the same, the subformatives are the same, they don't change, and the vocalization patterns are pretty much the same here. What happens here is you have in the sere, you have the sere under the second letter here, and when it gets down to the second masculine singular, you have a patak up under the second masculine singular, second feminine singular, first common singular, and then all the way down the line. So you really only see the sere is in the third masculine singular form here. Then from there it changes into either shiva or a patak. And usually you see the shivas under the second consonant, basically in your third feminine singular and in your third common plural. That's where you'll see the shivas, the vocal shivas, in those two, the third feminine singular and the third common plural. In the holum statives, within what we have here, is the holum actually return is in the third masculine singular, and then comes back to the second masculine singular and second feminine singular and first common singular. The only thing you notice that may change on here is basically the second masculine plural and the second feminine plural is where that is actually not a comments. This is actually a comments hatuf. That holum, which is a long vowel, a reducible long vowel, reduces down in the second masculine plural and the second feminine plural to a comments hatuf, a short O. And so you look at these. These are short. This is short A. That's your short A. This is a short O. This is a short O here. A class. So that is a comments hatuf on here. So I mean, the main thing we want you to learn right now is just get those formative endings in, and know that it's like I said, it's ah. Let's go back here. Ah, ta, t, t, oo. Tim, tin, nu. That's the way I gotta go here, because forget the third masculine because that doesn't have an ending. But you want to say ah, ta, t, t, oo. Tim, tin, nu. Ah, ta, t, t, oo. Tim, tin, nu. And just go through in your mind and close your eyes and picture those letters. And ah, ta, t, t, oo. Tim, tin, nu. Just go through that, and in doing repetition, that really helped me out a lot when I was learning it in here, because it's just going to be repetition frequency as you go through it. Just some notes on the Patak dative. Gadal is spelled just like the regular strong verb. There's no spelling changes in the paradigm. And number 2, with the seri dative, the seri stem vowel appears only in the third masculine singular, and that's what I already mentioned here in that. Now, with the holum dative, an O class stem vowel appears throughout the paradigm, except in the third feminine singular and the third common plural. The only change in this paradigm, therefore, is the O class stem vowel. In every other way, it's vocalized just like the regular strong vowel. And we noted that the O class vowel comes hatuf in the second masculine plural and the second feminine plural. Also, we need to note too that in Katan, for small, when you have the first common plural, you have that nu, you have the noon with the dogish forte in it, just like we talked about earlier. About whenever you have two of them together, then it's going to be one with a dogish forte. All right, so how can we change? How can we look at the difference, know the difference between the adjective, stative adjective, and a stative verb? Stative verbs are closely related to their corresponding adjectives. For example, zachen is either the cow perfect third masculine singular stative verb, he is old, or the masculine singular adjective, old. And let's just look at some of these examples here. We can see the third masculine singular, to be heavy, he is heavy, and then the adjective, kaveh. They're identical here. Identical. Malay, to be full. Malay, full. The adjective. Tameh, to be unclean. Tameh, unclean. Ra'ev, to be hungry, and ra'ev for hungry. So basically, you won't be able to tell the difference between the third masculine singular stative and the adjective. You have to let context and make the difference in here. The difference, however, between a stative and its corresponding adjective is that one is inflected as a verb above and the other as an adjective. So, that's basically, you see kaved, masculine singular, kavedim, masculine plural. Kaveda is feminine singular, and kavedot is feminine plural, and that's in the adjectives in here. So it's only going to affect the third masculine singular. Is the only thing that there may be a little ambiguity in. But again, you should be able to let context in order to correctly identify which form it is. Now, the one thing you want to make sure too is that the cow perfect third feminine singular kaveda, and the feminine singular adjective kaveda are similar but not confused. So this adjective here has the sere in it, whereas this verb has a shava in there. So that will basically shouldn't have any confusion on that. Now we're going to go into learning what we're going to require for parsing. Parsing, we parse nouns. We say they're masculine, singular, absolute, or masculine, singular construct. Now we're going to learn to parse what we need to do to parse the vowels here. Parsing the perfect vowels involves the identification of the verbal stem, number one, the conjugation, what tense is it in, what conjugation is perfect, the person, one, two, or three, the gender, masculine or feminine or common, and number, singular or plural, and then the verbal root. What root does it come from? Now, when parsing, give the appropriate information in the proper order as the following examples illustrate here. Okay, we look at here as a karti. We want to say this is a cow stem, perfect conjugation, first common singular. From Zakar, I remembered. Okay, cow stem, perfect conjugation, first common singular. Next one is shamart. We would say this is cow stem, perfect conjugation, second feminine singular, from the root shamar, you observe. We would translate it as you observed. So that's what we want to do to be able to parse these, is give the stem, the conjugation, the person, the gender, and the number. All right, let's go ahead into 1312. The negative particle lo is used both with the perfect and imperfect verbs, are negated with the particle lo, and it's usually translated as not. Now, it may also be spelled with the full spelling of lo, with the lamed, the whole above, and the aleph, but majority of times you're going to see it in this form with just the lamed and the holem and then the aleph. So some examples here is lo shamartem et hatorot. You did not observe the laws. Or we can say lo zakarta et habrit. You did not remember the covenant. So the lo will be placed immediately before the verb here. Here's the verb and here's the negative particle here. That's usually where you'll see lo coming right before it. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the particle of hene. The word hene, we see this quite often. Here's some alternate spellings of hain or hen. We commonly translate it as behold in some of the older translations, but it means a lot more than that. We say behold, hene is called a demonstrative interjection, but this is only one of its many uses and nuances. Hene appears over 1,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. It can stand alone or take a type 1 pronominal suffixes on it, just like a singular noun. Those that are attached to a single noun. You got hene, and then you got hineni. This is hineni, and hineni. This is the alternate form here. Hinecha, hinach, and hino. Here, second common singular, first common singular, second masculine singular, second feminine singular, and third masculine singular. And then you have hinenu, or hinu, and then hinechem for the second masculine plural. There's no attestation for the second feminine plural in the scriptures, and hinam for third masculine plural. So these are attested. These are the forms that were attested in the scriptures, found in the scriptures in those forms. While the particle hene is used in a number of different ways, 3 common uses are detailed below here. The particle hene may be used to add emphasis or to stress the importance of something as a demonstrative interjection. You have Vayar Elohim et kal asher asa vehene tov me'od. And so we have vehene tov me'od. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Me'od. Tov me'od. Very good. Genesis 1:31. And we have another example here. Hene ein Adonai el Yereiv. Behold, look, behold, the eye of the Lord is upon the ones who fear him. And so it's being used as a demonstrative interjection here to show emphasis, to bring about emphasis here. All right. The second use of hene is to be used to indicate immediate presence of someone or something with an emphasis on immediacy or urgency. So we have vehene anochi imach. It says, and behold, I am with you. So it's emphasis, immediate emphasis that I am with you, and it's what the Lord was telling Abraham in here. So, or with Isaac, I think it's Isaac in this case. Vayomer hineni, and he said, I am here. The form hineni, literally behold me, is the particle hene with a first common singular pronominal suffix. Behold me, or I am here. The particle hineni may be used to introduce a fact or situation with a subsequent statement is based. So, for example, here, when we get into Vayomer Shemuel el Kal Yisrael Hene Shemarti Bekolchem Leko Asher Amartem Li Va'amlik Alechem Melech. And we were basically, and Samuel said to all of Israel, behold, look here, I have listened to all that you have said to me, and therefore I have caused the king to reign over you. So, you see at the very, right there in the midst of it here, in the situation, and Samuel said to all of Israel, hey, look here, I've heard your voice, and all which you have said to me, I have caused a king to reign over you. So he's just saying this immediate, introduces a fact or situation with a subsequent statement is based on. Second example is hene na yadati ki isha yefat mar'eh at v'haya ki yiru otach hamisraim v'haregu oti ve'otach yechayu. Behold, I know that you are a woman with beautiful appearance, and so when the Egyptians see you, they will kill me but let you live. So it's just basically stating a fact here, a fact of a situation that they're in here. And so that's the three different uses of Hanani or Hane in the Hebrew here. And again, as you go through it and review it, you'll start seeing the differences. It become part of you right there for it. But anyhow, whenever you see, I always like to think of when Yeshua talks about behold, he's thinking about Hine in the Hebraic mindset. Look, here's the situation. I'm getting ready to tell you something here, or something I've done. And so, it's good to be able to correspond the usage that Yeshua uses and to take it back to Hane and understand its usage. So, all right, that's all for the Cal Stem perfect conjugation verb on the strong verbs. And the next lesson we will go ahead and get into will be on the weak verbs. But go ahead and do your homework for chapter 13 on the strong verbs, and we'll go into that in our next lesson, okay? All right, shalom.